Hello, my name is Neil Tembelkar and I work for Boston Children's Museum. I am joined by Lars Hasselblad Torres, who is the Executive Director of Artisans Asylum. As one of the largest makerspaces in New England, Artisans Asylum is a haven for local hands-on makers to use technology, share ideas, and create. In recent years, Artisans Asylum has partnered with Boston Children's Museum to inspire museum visitors year-round, especially at the annual Created By Festival. Over the last month, Artisans Asylum has been working hard, enlisting their members to work together to create personal protective equipment, or PPE, for local doctors, nurses, and frontline medical workers battling the COVID-19 pandemic. Lars joins me today to talk about how Artisans Asylum approached the fabrication of PPE, as well as the importance of local makerspaces. Hi, Lars. How are you doing today?
Hey, good morning, Neil, and everyone out there listening. I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. It's another day. I'm working from home. I wasn't able to get my cool backdrop to work, but I see that you were able to show some of the cool things happening at Artisans behind you there. That looks great.
Yeah, no, I mean, these guys hold a pose really well.
Absolutely. Um, so I was hoping we could start by maybe you providing a description of Artisans Asylum and maybe a quick history leading up to today, as well as what types of makers and projects can be seen being created there.
Yeah, well, I like how you described Artisans as a haven for makers of all kinds. And what that means is, it's sort of like imagine mom or dad's garage where all the tools are kept, except it's probably 100 times or 200 times bigger. And, we think of ourselves as a fabrication wonderland. And what that means is if you love to make things, we're probably the best place in New England to come and give it a try. We offer anyone who wants to get a membership, like at a gym or at a children's museum, um, a 24-hour access to our studios where anybody can sort of set up a mini shop, as well as one of 15 workshops. We have a wood shop, a metal shop. We have digital fabrication where you can do things like 3D printing, like a lot of young people are probably doing in schools today. Laser cutters. We also have a metal shop and a machine shop, a fabric arts studio. And many of these, as you said, are being used today, not to support members because we all have to stay at home and help, um, bend the curve, I guess, as they say, on this pandemic. So we're not really active for our members right now, but we are trying to contribute to ending this pandemic by creating some of this personal protective equipment you've been talking about. And that is putting a number of our shops to use in new ways, which is really exciting for us to learn because as makers, we love to make stuff. And the only thing we love more is learning how to make stuff with new tools. And we're doing a lot of that work right now.
That's great to hear. Can you tell us a bit more about how the PPE project kind of came together and who's working on it and sort of what resources are being used?
Yeah. It came together, very, I would say, organically. Sort of like if you had to describe how your room got messy, it's probably really hard to say, well, this is what I did. And, you laid it out, in such a way as to make it messy. That's a little bit like how we approach PPE. We started to hear that there was a need out there and we didn't understand it very well. And so we started talking to people in the medical community, in the maker community, in public health, local officials, and tried to identify where we could be most helpful. So through a lot of conversations and just kind of messy work by email and then trying to communicate what you learned in that email to 5 other people, we began to hone in on 3 really specific needs, which was helpful. If you want to help, it's often really good to have one thing that you can do and then tell 50 people to do that one thing. So for us, because we have something like 500 members, it was really important to try to identify a really clear way that we could make a contribution. And what we learned was that hospital workers really needed face shields. what they do is they provide a clear, optically clear barrier between the doctor and the patient, which prevents any airborne particulate from being exchanged. Um, of course, you still have to wear a mask underneath the shield, but it goes a long way to preventing the exchange of pathogens between the two parties. So we heard that that was a need, so we could sort of like put that on our list. We also heard that these N95 masks that everyone's talking about. If you've ever had a painter or a drywaller, or maybe even a gardener or someone come home, or maybe somebody's been doing home repair, these N95 masks are common, and they replace the surgical mask when those supplies ran out. And once N95 masks ran out, health workers were really struggling to find an alternative, a breathable barrier to wear beneath the shield. So we said, okay, well, maybe there's a way we can help that as well. And then the third area is with hospital gowns, such that you could don and doff a gown that would protect you from those same airborne pathogens that might be exchanged through contact. So you wouldn't be wearing the same clothes that were contaminated from the hospital room back home. You can sort of, or from patient to patient. Frankly, it's another big requirement. So those were the three things we learned pretty quickly were needed. So a big piece for us as makers is to now take what we've learned and what we've designed and gotten approved by local medical personnel, and make that available to other makers, so you can kind of expand the circle of productivity, if you will, to other groups as well now. Yeah.
Why is it important to Artisans Asylum to be able to get in front of these families and children?
Yeah. Well, to everyone who is, at home in isolation, I really feel for you. I'm actually calling in from my home. I came to spend the weekend with my family up here in Vermont, and it's tough, and I think it's really important that we connect, not only because we're part of the same community. Sometimes it's hard when things are moving so fast and you're in the middle of that fast moving river of activity, to pause and kind of reflect on what you're doing, and to not sort of lose sight of our civic attachments to each other through this process. I think that's really important. We want to connect with you and with the children who bring that museum to life.
There's so much creativity happening, and while right now we're at home, we're not deemed essential at the moment, there is a larger big picture where we know that there's so much creativity happening at both of our venues, and that needs to be supported.
Yeah.
So any viewers out there, just please do visit the Artisans Asylum website and donate if you can, and continue to support those in your community who are helping by creating PPEs, who are going out there into the world and doing the essential work that we need. Lars, I wanted to keep this kind of brief, but any last kind of message you wanted to put out there for any viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a challenging time when I think folks are at home and we haven't necessarily been deemed essential workers, but I think the biggest message is we're all essential, and that work of staying home is essential. We all have to do that, and I'm so grateful to everyone who is at home taking the time to watch this and making that essential gesture of sort of helping to bring us out of this pandemic together. So thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Lars, for joining me today. And I will be in touch just to check in on how you're doing over there. And I need to bring by some snacks for you and your team. So I'll be in touch about that.
Thank you. All right. Cheers, Neil. And goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye.